Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Friend Show. I am your host, Nicholas Lorimer, and today I'm joined by Mr. Terence Corrigan. Terence, how are you doing?
Hi, Nicholas. I'm okay, and yourself?
I'm all right. As all right as one can be for a Monday. And we're also joined today by Mr. Michael Morris, who's been having some internet connection problems, so hopefully that doesn't affect us too badly. But Michael, good to have you on the show.
Thanks very much. I also hope that everything goes smoothly. There are little glitches here and there, but I'm sure we'll overcome them.
Indeed. All right, let us get into our first story for today. And this is about EFF leader Julius Malema, who says that, while he originally supported the Springboks shortly after their win, that this was simply a slip in political consciousness, and he didn't really mean to. In fact, it was a bit of a mistake. You could almost say that his support for the Springboks was by mistake. Originally, he had tweeted out on social media declaring that when the Springboks won, that Siya Kolisi was my captain. He said on social media. He also, the EFF's official account celebrated the Springboks, saying congratulations to the Springboks for winning the World Cup, historic, monumental, and inspiring, said their Twitter account. However, he now has changed his mind and says that actually, you know what, the Springboks are an apartheid symbol and they need to go. He said that the EFF did not hate rugby, but that they, quote, don't love the Springboks. He said, Ama Boko Boko, the Boka Springboks is an apartheid symbol. You can't remove apartheid symbols and maintain the name Springbok and the Springbok emblem and the colors that were used during apartheid by white people. You can't say Rhodes must fall and not say Springboks must not fall. The Springboks must fall. He also then went on to say that why are we being forced to salute the emblem that was saluted by DF Malan, to salute the emblem that was saluted by P.W. Botha, by former National Party Prime Minister Henry Verwoerd, and by de Klerk? That emblem and that jersey represent white supremacists that we don't support. He also said that the fact that the EFF rejected the Springboks victory now, although they didn't originally, was proof that they weren't populists, because the Springboks were popular and they were still against them. Terence, this is kind of interesting, isn't it? The fact that it's very clear that Malema was watching the game and that he was just as caught up in the emotions of everything along with it. Along with everyone else. And then also that the EFF initially thought that it was a really great idea to praise the Springboks. What do you think accounts for this surprise sort of turnaround?
Well, I think the EFF is a media-hungry organization. I think it knows that by saying something divisive like this, it will get headlines. I think that's probably the long and short of it. It knows that it will upset certain people. I don't think this position is popular, probably not even with its own support base. But it's an organization that fundamentally thrives on division and confrontation, and if it can engineer that, that's what it will do. I do hope that people won't rise and take the bait. The Springbok as an emblem there was some talk in the 1990s about replacing it, but it was a very powerful kind of tour de force, and it's, I think, been almost universally accepted. So by all means, let Malema and his friends do their thing on what's it, X. I don't think it's something that they should get traction over.
Michael, what this kind of suggests to me is that a lot of Malema's shtick is, to a certain degree, cynical. That he plays the dedicated revolutionary fighter on the public stage. In reality, he's actually far more normal than he would have any of us believe. I don't know. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Interesting, of course, to remember that the Springboks, the term, I think, was coined during a South African national team's tour to England, if I'm not mistaken, 1905, if I seem to recall, and it was suggested to them that they should call themselves the Springboks from South Africa. Anyway, that's by the by. I think Terence is right. It's it's quite clever, actually, quite a clever way to get attention. Here's somebody who, as you say, Nicholas, who almost certainly watched the game, and I would imagine quaffing beers or Chivas Regal or whatever it is his tipple, and probably cheering along, getting as excited as everybody else, but probably feeling quite distressed at the fact that fate has not delivered to him the opportunity that was available to Cyril Ramaphosa to sidle up to the cup bearing Kolisi and beg a little of the glorious attention that he was getting. So it does suggest that this was the next best option, and it kind of looks it looks revolutionary. It looks a bit silly, actually, to any sensible person. But I imagine to plenty of other people, they'll think, well, yeah, he's right. Springboks, that's I mean, that's Afrikaans, and that's the old stuff, and we want something new, and quite besides the possibility of people taking it seriously, it just does get attention. It's always a difficult thing. It's a slightly different topic, but it relates, I think, to Terence's point. Is to what we would like the media to do. I don't think it would be wise for the media to decide that they are not going to show us things because they seem cynical or they seem contrived. That's for us to decide. It's the media's job is simply to bear witness. I hear a lot of people over the years, saying we shouldn't give the EFF oxygen. That's not the media's job to decide to cut the oxygen off politicians who running the third biggest party in the country. We've got to watch them. Everybody's got to watch them and talk about what they're doing, as we're doing now. And the question is just the quality of the analysis. And I think Terence's point is very good. Just on the, it's a very quick aside on the question of whether if this were a sort of sincerely ideological, there's a point that Terence himself made in a debate on ENCA, I think just last week, on the issue of the position of the private sector versus the state in South Africa, who should deliver solutions and what are the risks of the private sector taking over from the state and therefore making solutions unaffordable for people who don't earn a lot of money. And Terence's fundamental point was we're actually beyond an ideological argument. This is an argument about practical things, and I think this is where Malema is drifting off into this realm of silly ideologicality, if you like. It doesn't make any difference to anyone. It's completely worthless, has no contribution to make to our future and to improving the lives of people. So yeah, I think that's just one last point.
That's just interesting. So I'm just looking at his Twitter/X feed now, and I'm seeing he's put up in the last 2 hours a nasty tweet calling the Stronger Together campaign of the Springboks, quote unquote, rubbish. And I think this perhaps also explains part of really why he turned around. It's not just that there's some sort of ideological thing here. It's that he realized belatedly that the Springboks win undermines the fundamental project of the EFF, which is to divide South Africans along racial lines, which is to encourage racial resentment and hatred. And this is why he had to turn on it, because it was a moment when South Africans really, sort of came together in supporting a sports team. People from all over the country, people from all races, all classes. And he realizes that if this symbol is not tarnished and shaken down and thrown over, it will undermine the EFF's core message. Terence, any thoughts on that, and any final thoughts?
No, I think you've nailed it there. It's anything that promotes moderation, compromise, real solutions works against the EFF's business plan. And it's very similar for various other ideological hucksters and race hustlers across the country. You don't want to actually resolve anything. You want to keep it flame. That's also why you will see enormous effort being put into discussing something like the incorrect demographic mix of an organization, but very little about how things like language proficiency or the sort of school to work pipeline functions, because those disrupt the narrative. They're often sometimes they may be virtually impossible to solve. Sometimes they actually be quite easy to resolve. But discussing them and acknowledging them takes the sting out of the divisive narrative. And also, incidentally, this is something that the whole diversity industry has cottoned onto. Notice that a lot of these people who charge a large amount of money will, be headed off at the pass by saying, "Oh, you're not going to get away with just one session. This is going to be a long-term thing." And we can always find something else, for people to be offended about, or for us to tell you they're offended about. So I say, I think it's insane, syphilitic, late-stage capitalism where they could sell you your own neuroses. I think Karl Marx would probably be insulted by that.
Yes, I'm sure.
At least the capitalists in the 1840s were producing stuff.
It's also worth noting that if you look at the different responses to Malema's posts on this, his praise for the Springboks and then also his bashing of them, the bashing one is far more controversial, even among his own followers, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And I mean, there's almost something encouraging to take away from this, is that, what he's actually advertising is that he has nothing to offer a united, prospering South Africa. All he can do, as Terence says, is sell us this idea that we've got to invest in a grievance and a division and so on, and whatever we do, there's no repairing that. Repair that and you damage the project of the Red Berets. And yeah.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to our next story. And there is a story in Bloomberg about how South Africa is struggling to process visas. So, as anyone who knows our economy well knows, we have been suffering a bit of a brain drain, and we're in urgent need of skilled workers. And there are indeed people who do come to South Africa to work, sometimes to move here permanently, sometimes to work here temporarily, skilled workers. But the opportunity to take advantage of their skills and develop the economy and develop our companies and businesses is being stymied by the fact that government seems unable to process their visas. Schools, universities, in the small enterprises have been complaining that the Department of Home Affairs appears unable to efficiently process work and residence permits, and that it is seriously hampering their operations. Some have been left short of staff, others have delayed or reconsidered investment plans, with several other African countries now being considered as alternative sites for regional headquarters for various companies looking to set up shop in Africa. This is a story relatively recently about how dysfunctional the e-visa system in particular was. This was a new initiative that had been set up by government, but that something like a majority of e-visa applications were just never attended to in time and therefore were rejected, which is obviously not ideal. Terence, what do you make of this?
Yeah, South Africa has not really had a proper immigration policy or proper migration policy since 1994. There's all sorts of reasons for this, and it's there is an odd assumption, I think, within the state that which they actually share, I think, very much with the Afrikaner nationalists of old, that immigration is something to be looked at with your, while holding your nose. I think there was a National Party minister who said that our population growth will come through the cradle, not the steamship. And this, look, there's of course a whole history there. But he said this at a time when war devastated Europe was disgorging millions of immigrants around the world, and for a party that whose futures depended on demographics, that possibly wasn't the smartest thing to do. Now, I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying that there it is. I understand Rhodesia did the same thing. There were apparently a lot of migrants from Italy were working on building dams, and very few of them were permitted to stay. Now, in our case, it's rather different. Entrepreneurs, managers, academics. I mean, that article talks about. I think it's a UCT professor. I've heard this over and over again. I personally know of somebody, a guy from Eastern Europe, educated in South Africa with an advanced degree, employed, self-supporting, married to a native-born South African with a child, cannot get permanent residence. So, he and his family have now decamped to another part of the world, taking their skills, their tax-paying power, and everything with them. The question is, exactly how does this end? Do we do we wait for the sort of Albert Einsteins to come knocking on our doors? We'll take you and you, but no one else. No, it's the air of unreality that circles so much that circles so much governance. And this is actually one issue where the government actually admit there's a problem. So it's like not that. I don't know. It just beggars belief, really. South Africa is not a premier immigration destination anymore. So why make it difficult for those people who can make a contribution to come here?
Right. This is what's so sort of twisted, is that if you want to follow the immigration rules, everything is put in your way. The system is dysfunctional. It's broken. And so no wonder, from the top to the bottom, we've got problems where people are here on dubious status, or they cross illegally, or they have to leave the country because of residence permit problems, as you say. I knew a Zimbabwean who had lived here most of her life, very engaged here, permanently lived here, wanted to get South African citizenship, applied for it, she qualified. They just never did the application after literally years and years of waiting. Michael, what do you make of all this? It just seems utter madness.
I think it is. I certainly endorse all Terence's points, and I think it's probably true that a country that makes it easier or easiest easy for a skilled immigrant to come and succeed is a country that makes it easiest for its own citizens to succeed. It's a kind of mindset that we're looking for the right skills to help us develop our economy and all the rest of it. I think that's a kind of mindset that would, if it allowed to permeate through the state apparatus, government, and so on, policy making, is the kind that is looking at real issues, real problems, and so on. I was quite interested to see in that Bloomberg story that in fact is, as you say, Nicholas, arises from government anxiety about the difficulty of getting sufficient skills into the economy from wherever they are available, and it's chiefly from outside. Two issues arise there. One is the school to jobs pipeline that Terence referred to a little earlier. It's almost as if we're saying, well, we can forget about South Africans, so we've got to rely on foreigners. That might be quite clever in the short term, because perhaps that is where the skill is, because of our deficiencies in our education. But we really, that's clearly something we need to look at. But one of the things that interested me in the story was the COSATU, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, position on this question of immigration. Their acting national spokesperson, Matthew Parks, expresses skepticism about the need to import skilled workers, and instead wants more money spent on training South Africans. we've been a little bit concerned that business has gone for the shortcut route rather than finding out if there is someone in South Africa that can do the job. I think we can probably be fairly sure that the business is very astute at these things. They've figured out where the skills are, if they can get them, what they cost, is the productivity high enough, all these things. The cost of staff, I think, is probably one of the highest costs in any business. And what the government ought to do is to say to business, you tell us what you need and we will make it easier for you to do that, because we understand that your role is the most important one in a situation where we've got almost certainly half of our young people unemployed and a third of all employable South Africans unemployed. We need every little bit of help we can get, and let's do the sensible thing. But yeah, that's clearly not what we're getting.
All right.
Just on that, the whole question of training, it's not something that you can resolve by throwing a 6-week course in.
Exactly.
It's as I say, it's something that goes from early childhood development. I think you get to a point where it's almost impossible to sort of reverse those deficits. The other thing is that there are a lot of intangibles that come with migration. People coming from the industrialized areas of China. Now everyone knows I'm not a great fan of communist China, but I do think there's something there's something very admirable about many of the enterprising people who show up here with a small amount of money, business contacts back at home, and they're willing to work long hours to create value that didn't exist there. The same, I think, is true for Somali traders. They a couple of years ago, one of our in a moment of brilliance, one of our ministers said, "Well, I must realize they're guests here and they must share their secrets." There's no great secret. What you have is a lot of sort of clan-based trust. People, club together to form credit associations. They can buy goods, in bulk, and they can sell them competitively. So there you see, I've just legitimated every foreign trader in South Africa.
You're mentioning a Somali trader. Just on Friday, I was up in Johannesburg and needed to get from Auckland Park to the airport, and my Uber driver happened to be a young Somali student who is studying international politics, international relations and politics at University of Johannesburg. He came here specifically to study because it was an option, and he grasped it. To pay for it, he drives an Uber from Friday afternoon 3:00 until Sunday evening at 6:00. He knows exactly how much money he needs to make, and that's what his target is, and he works as many hours as he needs to get that. And we had a long chat about his life and life in Mogadishu and life here and so on. And one of his interesting remarks was he just does not understand how it is possible for us to have such a high unemployment rate, because he says there is so much work. That's exactly it's somebody coming in from outside who can actually teach us something about just the virtues and the benefits of effort, of thinking of yourself in different terms. You have an opportunity, exploit it, use it. Solutions are graspable. Yeah,
exactly. As difficult as economic situation is here, in Somalia they're a lot worse. So, and he's able to see that difference and make the best of it.
I've heard that this is something you find with a lot of people from depressed countries who make their way to Britain or to America or to developed countries. They can't believe how easy it is to make money there. And this goes from whether you can do an extra shift at McDonald's, and they'll give you money for doing those hours. Or, yes. Well, I don't mind working 18 hours like in my little convenience store, and only charging a 5% markup.
Mm. It's
It is something we can learn from.
It's an easy group to blame.
Yeah,
Indeed.
absolutely.
Anyway, let's move on to probably our last story for today. And this is a bit of research done by the University of Cape Town's Library Institute of Strategic Marketing, which shows that middle-class South Africans are, as in many other places in the world, putting off retirement. And basically, this is not because they're necessarily poorer, because they can't afford it, but actually because older people these days are more comfortable working longer and not sort of being ready to give up on work and just settle down. And that, in fact, according to this report, many of them are looking younger and staying healthier for far longer. And that retirement at the age, particularly of sort of 60, 65, may be an outdated concept, is the suggestion in this report. And this is indeed a trend that's going on across much of the developed world. Michael, what do you make of this? There are obviously policy implications for this about retirement age and that kind of stuff, but you had another observation in our pre-show discussions.
I mean, a few things I think are worth pointing out. I happen to be in that sort of cohort, just between 60 and 65. I hope that I'm healthy and don't look quite as old as people my age, maybe 50 years ago. But there's certainly, I mean, as the life I live, there's certainly no question that I could easily give up working, and even though I've in fact been quite responsible, I think, over my lifetime saving, it just, the pressures of the world today are such that you can't on the same sort of pattern of life as perhaps our parents did, and that is, I think, also a good thing. Before I get to the point that you want me to get to, the other thing that I think is quite significant in the stories is just, the fact that people over 55 have a great deal of experience to share and a great deal to contribute. So I think that's quite a good thing in terms of the economy and society, that there is perhaps an acknowledgement that once people have developed all this skill and experience, they be given an opportunity to continue to kind of reinvest it, if you like, into how things are done and how solutions are sought and one thing another. But what is very striking, I think, is that the middle class in South Africa is very much, as the piece says, very much in tune, or very much aligned to patterns of work and retirement and so on that are common to the developed world. And what is distressing and is quite an indictment of, especially of our last 30 years, is that so many South Africans simply aren't in that position to make choices about these things. They just have to scrounge as best they can for as long as they can. You see very old people still battling, still trying to keep families together, and doing menial work, hard work that, I know that even my age, I find that much more taxing than 10 years ago. So there's quite a tragic element to the South African experience of this aging process, and having to keep working just to feed yourself and your family. I saw a figure somewhere in the piece that referred also to our notoriously bad savings behavior. Only 6% of South Africans can afford to retire, and I think that probably is true. It's a kind of mixed blessing. It may be good for them that they have to keep working for some of them, but if it's not healthy work, or it's work that requires, that depends on your being young and fit and healthy and so on, then I'm sure it can become a terrible burden. So all kinds of elements to the story, I think.
Terence, your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think that I've noticed that there's a certain trend where people say, well, the middle class can afford to, but the poor can't. I'm not. I tend to think that those people who say those sort of things tend to be in the very upper end of the middle class, and
Yes,
perhaps not encumbered by children or whatever.
exactly.
No, actually, to maintain your sort of middle class standard of living, is hellishly expensive. You are taxed, and then you've got to essentially privatize yourselves out. I mean, I wonder if we had functional education, functional health services, or whatever, if you didn't have to pay your medical aid, your security, and whatever, just how much money that would free up. And I think as we, as people get older, demands particularly for medical care remain, and that's not something that they can, that they're able to sort of take care of out of pocket, or not willing to rely on the state for. If you were in the Netherlands or Sweden or wherever, not only are they fairly generous state provision, but odds are most people have resources of their own, plus social services are excellent. So that's for myself, retirement is kind of like a distant thing that I doubt I shall ever experience. Or as I say, what's that song? I'll sleep when I'm dead.
That's reminds me of the joke about what's your retirement plan, the lottery. Anyway, I think we're going to call it to a close there. I did just want to mention our last story, which maybe we'll talk about tomorrow because it's just so crazy. There's this destitute municipality in the northwest who have managed to spend 38 million rand on a call center in a shack on the same premises as their already existing call center, and it's not entirely clear whether anything is actually being done in this call center. And even better, they are renting the computer equipment for this call center, including renting a mouse for 470 rand a month.
Okay.
Yeah, that's. I think we're going to have to talk about it tomorrow. Anyway.
You said that municipality was bankrupt. I think I know why.
Yeah, this might be an indication as to why they're having money troubles. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. We hope that you found the show interesting. We'll be back tomorrow with the Daily Friend Wrap. Cheers, everyone.